It's a plot to drop the IQ, fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones, a holly suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The pauper see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Soul, where I do actually own more clothes, jewelry, earrings than this. This is just all I ever wear. I have become Steve Jobs, and I wear one thing ever. And I bought multiple of this so that I can wear it all summer long. It's pretty amazing. I'm sure you remember, if you've been following me long enough, me telling you about this, I think last year. But it has been a revolutionary game changer to become Steve Jobs and wear only one outfit. But I don't actually, but all summer long, you're going to see essentially this and nothing else. Eventually it'll change. You'll get a different view, but for now, this is it. So anyway, nothing to do with the topic tonight. Tonight, we're talking about university radicalization and indoctrination. And I guess I didn't realize how few people actually even understand what it is that happens at universities. And I have a really unique perspective on it because I am someone who went to, probably not even arguably, like probably just objectively, in everybody's opinion, the most radical college or university that exists in the United States, and then was radicalized, then became a communist, then was in the streets agitating for revolutionary communist dictatorships and takeover, before I was broken free from that mind trap by my deep understanding that I have a soul, which is rare. And so that's what freed me from that trap and allowed me to start questioning and moving away from those ideologies, and eventually into much different places, and eventually like actual anarchy and actual liberty mindedness and awareness, and also someone who even has a respect for capitalism, a deep respect for capitalism. So radically different place that I am at now. And so I get to look back at the whole thing, and I get to really understand deeply, what happened. I'm also highly intelligent for psychological, as far as not being a psychologist, but being someone who's been very deeply intertwined with a field of psychology and studied it and lived it in many ways. I've got that perspective as well to sort of add to this. So I have this political savviness, this psychological savviness, and this just experience in my life that I think lends some interesting views on the radicalization that does go on in university grounds, and what's become true since then. I went to this university I'm talking about, specifically is the Evergreen State College, more recently, kind of infamous, I'll say, for being so radical, but at the time relatively unknown. But those who did know it knew exactly what it was. And, super hippie, we'll say. It was very, very a hippie place, but it was also therefore a very radical place politically. But the Evergreen State College, that was 25 years ago. 25 years ago that I went there. I went there from, I shouldn't say 25, it was only 20 years ago. I went there from about 2000 to 2003 or so. Is that right? No, it was 2003 to 2006 or so. Yeah, that's right. And so I got my bachelor's there. I did my associates in about 3 years. I did my bachelor's in about 3 years. Then I did my master's in about 3 years. So I did the 9-year, 6-year degree. And I just took my time, took sabbaticals, traveled here and there from time to time, and really got the most out of those loans that I could possibly get. So, so again, that was a long time ago, but I remember. I'm not, I'm not forgetting. And I just look back at it. It's almost like this like fog of war. I'm like, really, that's who I was? But I again have to give myself credit, because half of this is psychological, if not 100% of it psychological. And so universities have a profound impact on young people, no matter where they come in at, because, essentially you're always dealing with the same thing, which is young people whose brains haven't finished developing, Most people are graduated by the time they're 25. That's when your brain's done developing. So you've still got this indoctrination effect that is on these super pliable developing minds and identities. And so that this naivety, this, brain pliability, and then also this emotional and life experience immaturity, right? But that's not how university kids feel. And you may relate. We felt like I felt like I was grown when I was 12 years old. I mean, you keep this delusion for a while. And if you grow out of it, it's usually about 25 to 30 where you're like, oh, now I'm kind of growing up. I was never grown before now. If you're an honest person. And if you're even more honest, you'll say, I didn't really fully even have an ability to understand myself as a self in a world that is social and political in a pretty good, balanced, mature way until late 30s, 40s even. And this is why actually that's the age where many people who were once very idealistic and often leftist and maybe even revolutionary minded have become more conservative, and they get criticized for it. But really, it's actually just sort of a natural progression of your growth as a human. It's your personality and your brain's development. So we're going to talk a little bit more about all of that tonight, because I don't think people really understand how radical it can get and why it gets that radical. I think people misunderstand deeply, in fact, that it isn't just that you go and you're exposed to a bunch of people of different opinions. If it were just that, that'd be great. If you just went and you met people from all over the country and you people you didn't grow up with, and you had this sort of, big gestalt of new sort of beingness around, like, cool. That's not radical, right? But there are other things that go on. So we'll look a little bit into that and more, and we'll do it right now. So as always, go to roguesoul.org for everything that I do. I am doing the soul heart-centered healer, just the heart-centered healer course right now. We just started last night as of this show, and fantastic group of people, powerful energies coming through already, beautiful. Just what people are going to receive from that. Technically, you can still join us. Some people, aren't even able to make the class live. I do teach it live via Zoom, and then the recording is available to people, and some people can't make it live. So they're only going to catch the recording, which is the same as being there live. So, you don't get to ask questions live if you aren't there, but technically it's still available. So I was about to take it down today, and I got the guidance to leave it up in case some of you are still looking to join us. I've got a large group of people, really cool, a powerful group of people, and you will be in good company. So if you have that pull and that call to step into your own spiritual healing channels and offer that to yourself and others as a spiritual gift, this is the class for you. I also offer one-on-one spiritual healing, tarot, spirit guide sessions, and sound healing, and more. You can book all of those sessions through the site at Rogue Soul as well. So that's all here for you. Or some of you just have my Calendly booked and you just go straight there, and you don't need to intermediary of the site Rogue Soul to get to it. So One Day of Brightness is coming up soon. We're just a few weeks away from the last One Day of Brightness. So as you know, every equinox and solstice, we get together as a group of individuals who wants to receive blessings, messages, spiritual assistance, guidance, and infusion of high-level energy, celebration of the equinox and solstice, and more. And so this is the final one that's in this format, in this title of this type. And so, I'll be doing more group events, of course, as always, group blessings, group prayers, group meditations, all sorts of things. But this is the last official One Day of Brightness. So I really hope you can join us for that. That is coming up on September 27th. Again, it's via Zoom, it's live, but if you can't make it during those times, you can always come back to the recording afterwards. So that is there usually for about a week after the event for you to check in, tap in, and receive all of that. Lots more on the site, including the favorite things tab of all the stuff that I love. My books are here, and it's just a lot of stuff. So go check it out at roguesoul.org. rogueways.substack.com is where I hope you have been subscribed for years, and I hope if not, you finally subscribe. It is free. There's plenty of articles and content for free here. It can get mailed straight to your email if you want, or you can just come check in. Either way, it's up to you. You're the one who sets up your settings. But if you want to be a paid subscriber, you also get channeled messages from the spiritual ancestors that are deep, profound, often prophetic, and always accurate and beautiful. So I love sharing those with people who support me, support the show, and support what I do. And you can do that by becoming a paid subscriber at rogueways.substack.com. So we'll start here, the Evergreen State College. It's a beautiful college, by the way. I mean, I'm biased because I love Pacific Northwest. I love the Puget Sound. It's a pretty amazing campus down there in Olympia, Washington, in this really beautiful setting. And I don't know what it's like now, but when I went, it was still off in a giant amount of forest, like a decent ways outside of the city itself. So pretty cool. As you can see, even by this short film you might be watching on your screen, it's a very hippie still. And, you know, I love that they incorporate Native elements in art. And I love that our mascot was the gooey duck. And I love this beautiful campus with all of my heart. And I had a great time there. I think many people do, no matter what college they go to. I didn't do the full Evergreen thing. I wasn't a traditional student. I worked 2 jobs and did all kinds of other stuff that I've always, no matter what I've been doing in life, been much more concerned with my own life than with like whatever it is I'm doing. So if I have a job or if I'm going to college, like that's like the thing, that's like the other thing I'm doing. But what I'm really doing is living, right? And so that's why it takes me 3 years to finish 2-year degrees. But I not because I fail things, it's just because I go slower. And so I also do evening and weekends in almost every program I do. And this was no different. So the traditional full Evergreen experience is even more indoctrinating than the one I did. So I sort of skipped through that by doing evening and weekends, where normally at Evergreen, what you do is each quarter or semester, I don't remember, but you pick a program that is 15 to 20 credits, and it is one program. And you do that with a group of people, and you're with the same group of people in each of the classes. It's not even really broken up into, here's your math credits, here's your science, here's your English. It's all one class. And it's just embedded into it as all these things. I actually like that philosophy too. It's a really decent way to learn. But you can imagine too how tight-knit you would get with a group of people that you went to every single class every single day for an entire semester with that group. You could also see how if you were ever to, let's say, disagree with the norm, you might be deeply and quickly quelled and suppressed. And that's what often these types of community situations can do. On the other hand, they can become very safe for people, and people can really feel like they can share and, be themselves. And that can be really cool. If done well, it can be perfect. Unfortunately, Evergreen does have a very radical side of it, made famous by Brett Weinstein in the past handful of years, who did not participate in the infamous Day of Presence, Day of Absence. I've talked about that many times because it was so popular and because everybody was talking about it and because I went there. When I went there, nobody really had to participate in Day of Absence or Day of Presence. And what those are is one day, like all of the people of color are not there. They don't go to school or they don't work. They go to work and they don't show up. And then the next day, like all of the white people don't go. And so I don't remember which day is which day, but that's what it is. And I just didn't care because I was busy doing things. And that didn't matter. And let's remember, I was becoming a revolutionary at the time, and I still didn't participate in that because I didn't care. So it really didn't matter if you did or not, to the point where, fast forward to just a few years ago at Evergreen State College, Brett Weinstein was driven out of his profession and his career by students who were so upset that he wouldn't leave on the day when white people were supposed to leave. That's how radical it's become. It was radical enough when I was there. It's gone so much further down this road of hatred and lack of inclusion, actually. It's cool. It's cool to celebrate all of these diverse things. It's cool, like I said, to have Native American art and all that sort of stuff. It's cool to do things in an alternative way until you start hating. Until you start destroying. You start destroying people's lives because they don't agree with you, as we've seen this past week, which can eventually lead to murder, assassination, political assassination of Charlie Kirk and the like, and more. whatever you think about who maybe did it or why they did it or what went on, we're going to, not because we automatically buy it, but because we're looking at the narrative, we're going to stick to the narrative that this was Tyler Robinson who pulled off a shot from a decent distance, but not a difficult distance if you've shot rifles before and are any even remotely good kind of marksman. If you're a hunter, for example, that would be a very easy shot. And that this is the person who did this, that this person perhaps became radicalized at the university level, and that this person also is in a relationship with a trans person and into leftist and trans sorts of ideologies, as well as anti-capitalist types of ideologies as well, revolutionary ideologies or Marxist ideologies, nebulously, we could say. So that might turn out to be different than what's actually true, right? This isn't all figured out yet and done and with like nails in the coffin yet, but that's what we're going with for now. That's the story for now. And so, yeah, so we're, if that's the case, like this is definitely something that could have been a kid who started out with his Republican family, as is obvious he had, and maybe even had a pretty tight-knit family, and then went to college and very, very quickly became more and more and more radicalized, separate from his home identity and his home sort of culture, and for many, many reasons. But one of those reasons is the radicalization that happens on university campuses. So I'm kind of enamored with this gooey duck mascot, by the way. I never got to see the gooey duck mascot when I was there. I just knew that our mascot was gooey duck, which I thought was so ironic and amazing. It's such a hipster thing, right? So it's very attractive to young people. So anyways, so this is Evergreen. Evergreen is pretty radical. And here's an example of some of the things you can find at Evergreen, which again, this has become mainstream now. At the time, this was kind of like only Evergreen and maybe not Woodring. Oh, what is it up in Bellingham, Washington? Well, anyways, the other Evergreen-like college that's also in Washington State. Those two places you would find things like this, and most of the other colleges you would not. You would not. You maybe find a tiny niche, like separate little, like few credits you could get somewhere on some of these things. But let's see. Some of these are pretty average, right? Agriculture, studio and music production, archaeology, these types of things. And it quickly starts to get into some of the other stuff, climate and environmental justice. For once, climate action and policy, coast Salish wool weaving. That's literally an academic certificate you can get at Evergreen State College. It's cool. I'm not against it. I'm just saying, like, yeah. So communication is fine. Some of these things, again, very, very normal stuff. And I'll say also, Evergreen, at least when I went, had one of the best science programs in the country. And they were actually one of the only colleges that was working on phages and the benefits of phages in the body. And that's still a really revolutionary scientific approach to disease. So really cool things can happen even at hippy dippy, really radical places. Just, let's remember that. That's why you can find so many actually normal sort of seeming things here. But here's one, El Camino Latinx or Latinx, whatever you're supposed to say, studies, Latin American studies and multilingual education. That's one path, by the way. That's one education path there. So it's like a thing you can major in. It's not just a class they offer. These are all potential majors and minors. Environmental justice, environmental solutions, prison education program, fiber arts. Some of these aren't as revolutionary as others. They're just interesting. We had food justice. Food justice is an entire major or minor you can choose at Evergreen. I will give you also a little insight here. You can literally major or minor in anything at Evergreen. You can make up anything and make it your major or your minor. And then you can even design your own credits and classes, and then you can take them by yourself with just a person who you report to once a week and tell them what you've learned, what you've taught yourself. Again, I actually love that. I think that'd be fantastic for people like me who are incredibly motivated, intelligent, and already know what we're doing, right? For everyone else who doesn't, who wasn't, raised that way or didn't come in that way with that level of like confidence and clarity and, motivation, this is horrible, actually. And I have friends who have graduated from Evergreen State College with nothing. They have hundreds and hundreds of credits, and it makes nothing. They just have a mishmash of credits that don't make anything, and nobody cares. And their degree is in nothing. And they made up a name for their degree, but nobody cares because you go to some other college or you go to some job and you're like, I have a degree in Coast Salish wool weaving. And they're like, oh, okay. I mean, like, what? Are you useful? You doing anything useful? And the answer is no. You can go on forever at Evergreen, making up your classes, making up your majors and minors. And if it's not this way anymore, I would be surprised, because it had been that way its entire existence. And it was that way last time I checked. And it was definitely that way the whole time I was there. In fact, I used that system and I made up my own classes frequently, because they wouldn't be offering the classes I needed for the degree I needed. The degree I needed was a real degree, and I wanted to get it done and go do other stuff, as I've said. So I would just say, okay, well, I need 4 credits in, this type of thing. And so here's the class. I propose to do this. And they'd be like, okay. And then I'd do it and I'd get the credits by myself. So food justice is not one of those that someone just made up. This is one they actually offer. Enough people might have made it up long enough that they were like, let's go with this, right? That may be how that came about. Gender, sexuality, and queer studies. We've got, we've got so much more, I'm sure. We're just at L. I guess L and M is all the normal stuff. I should say traditional stuff. Yeah, maybe we saw all the weird stuff already. I'm just looking to see. Trauma-informed engagement and healing. Well, that would be great, but yeah, writing trauma, healing, and resilience as well. Not bad. Not a bad thing at all. Not necessarily traditional. So, some of those are a bit out there. That's evergreen. That's evergreen for you. Here's the course catalog as well, back from 2003 when I was going there. And wow, it's a lot. Hopefully you can still see it. I have to zoom this because it's like so small. Documenting the Northwest. Equal opportunity, engaging Cuba. Oh, this is all mixed in with teacher names too. So annoying. The Good Life and the Good Society, Growing Up Global. None of these are horrible. Again, I don't want to bash it too much because there's really good things about this model. There's really good things. But like I said, if you don't know exactly what you're doing, I mean, here's Queer Looks, Queer Books. You could take classes like Queer Looks, Queer Books, and underwater basket weaving, as they always joke. But actually, you could take classes like this the whole time and end up with a degree in nothing. Politics and Ideologies from the Americas. Politics, Power, and the Media. I'm like, if I taught any of these classes, they'd be amazing. But I know how they teach it there. And I should say also actually had really good teachers who taught in a constructivist methodology for the most part, which is actually the best way to teach, as a teacher who has a master's in actual teaching, not just education generally or whatever, but in teaching itself, like how to teach human beings things. Constructivism is the best way. And it's essentially where you say, here's some stuff. What do you think about it? What are you going to do with it? And then you just help people do things with it. And actually people learn the most this way. So you're never telling them what to think. You're teaching them how to think. And that's the best way. And so I did have most of my teachers in the evening and weekends programs who were like that. And so we had a lot of conversations and things like this. I'll tell you, though, one of the things I found in this catalog was the class I took in 2003, one of the classes, which was called Identity, Power, and Privilege. And it's exactly what you would expect that class title to be. It was 3 days and 3 credits somehow. Imagine that. I don't know. 3 days and 3 credits. And it was about identity, power, and privilege. The entire class, mind you, was me and about 20 other people sitting in a room for 8 hours at a time, each of the 3 days, and just talking about our identities, what power that may or may not give us in our society, and who does or doesn't have privilege between us. It was like sitting in the most ridiculous struggle session of your life forever. Struggle sessions, by the way, are what Marxists and communists call browbeating you until you give in and just say that you agree. And unfortunately, when you do this with people who are generally unwell, immature, naive, like a lot of college students are, it gets ridiculous. I look back and I'm so proud of this one person who was such a problem for everyone at the time, who was like, you don't know what I, and people were like, well, you're white. And they were like, you don't know if I'm white? And they're like, well, you look white, you know, you get to act white, you pass as white, as they say. Like, well, I'm not white. You don't get to tell me I'm white. And this is the sort of like flip. I could tell they were doing it too. Like they were like, oh, I'm going to play this if you're going to be this ridiculous. And we get 3 credits to sit here and talk about if we're white or not, if it matters or not, and who has power or not. And it's cool. I learned some things from people. Like I didn't know, for example, until that day that there were, that it was hard for Black people to find makeup, for example, or that it could be, depending on where they lived. I had no idea. So there was things I didn't know that people went through, that I got a window in this. That's not bad. Is it worth 3 credits? Probably not. The text that we used also is quite radical, and it's called, I found it here on archive.org, Privilege, Power, and Difference. Privilege, Power, and Difference. And so you can read the whole text here for free if you want to. It's 212 pages, but I'll just read you the contents so you get an idea of what this class consisted of. Again, all we actually did was sit around and talk to each other about our identity and privilege for 24 hours. But we were outside of that time reading this text, and the idea was you had to read the whole text and prove that you had read it, and you get the credits, right? So it starts with Rodney King's question. Why can't we all just get along, right? Or is that his question? It says, we're in trouble. We can't talk about it if we can't use the words. And I think that's talking about using the words of race, like Black, white, or our various ethnicities or backgrounds. And says the trouble we're in, privilege, power, and difference. Difference is not the problem, it says. Oh, did you know difference isn't our problem? Like, yeah, everything's different from everything else. That's the nature of reality. Of course, it's not the problem. Mapping differences. Who are we? And this is where you're supposed to map out your differences. This book, if not this book, it was in this class. I believe it's in this book where it literally has you tabulate how many identity points you have, how many privilege points you have, and how many, I don't know what, oppression points you have. I'm not joking. So I had to sit there and be like, oh, I'm a woman, so I have an oppression point, but I appear white to people, and so I have a privilege point, but my culture is not actually white, and so I sort of almost kind of lose that privilege point, but not really, because I still pass as white. And I was kind of a Christian growing up, but that wasn't my identity, and I didn't get to claim it anymore, so I kind of had an oppression point there, but it was sort of a neutralized one. I'm not kidding, it was this retarded. And we counted it all up, right? So I have a disability, so now I have an oppression point there, even though I'm quite capable and able, and no one knows about any of my disabilities. I have more than one, so I had a couple of points there. So I ended up having all of these points of oppression. Before I went into this class, I did not think of myself as oppressed. And this is radicalization in itself. I've already in a class gotten credits for, been rewarded for, and been rewarded in the group for, right? Because if you have any oppression, everyone's like, oh, you poor thing, congratulations, right? And so I've been sort of already emotionally, mentally drawn into this ideology that who I am is creating oppression in the world, and it has created oppression my whole life, and I'm only now noticing it, right? I actually grew up with some of these narratives that women are oppressed and there's, all these things. So I wasn't totally foreign that might be a thing, but now I was forced to literally tabulate it all and give myself scores and be like, here's how oppressed I am, and internalize that. Right. And again, in this type of a setting, even in this case, being a little different from those semester long, same group the whole time, we knew we were going to be 24 hours in this room with these people. So if you're not strong-minded and you're not willing to speak up and you're not willing to play that game that one person's playing, is like, honey, I'm white, right? If you're not able or willing to do those things, you're going to just get pushed along anyways. And so you're going to be even more likely to be like, okay, well, this is my new ideology. Right? Here's what I accept now about myself and everyone else. And so if you're white and you're a Christian and you're a male and you're even remotely not poor, in this class, you are like equivalent to Satan. Right? You are the bad guy. You are the one doing all the oppressing. Everything in life is built for you. You have all the privilege. And never mind that you might have felt just like the rest of us, many oppressions, many and large, and many failings of the system, or many failings of life or society, or many hurts visited upon you by other people or your parents or other things, because that's life. And it actually doesn't matter if you're rich or poor or white or black or whatever, but in this class, it matters. So if you have all those privilege points, even if you feel like, well, I don't feel great, like I don't feel like I've been given everything, I don't feel like my life's been easy, they're like, oh, well, no, you just don't know your privilege because you've never lived in the other shoes of these people who are, right? Who have all these privilege, oppression points. You've never experienced that. So you just don't even realize how good you have it. So now you're internalizing this shame and this guilt. Oh, I didn't know I was so bad. I didn't know I was so bad and that I had it so good, right? I thought I actually didn't have it so great and that I was a pretty good person, but nope. Turns out I'm real bad and I have it really good, right? So you're already internalizing all this just in this very short class. This is just one class. This is just 3 credits out of, I don't remember. How many do you get? 90, 120, I don't remember, but just 3. But I didn't have a class at Evergreen that didn't have this exact same narrative built into it in some way. Except the classes I made myself, they might not have, but everything else did in some way. And so that was Evergreen, right? This is college. So I was already starting to get sort of radicalized and sort of indoctrinated into this system of thinking. And there was no real questioning it. There's no real science to this. You can't prove that this is true, but it's presented as such fact. And it's presented in ways where well, of course you didn't notice it before now. It's built into the system. You were meant to never notice, right? So what is privilege? Privilege is a paradox, and that's just this factor that points out you might not feel privileged, but you are, right? You might feel oh, life's been kind of hard, but nope, it's been easy for you, this sort of thing. It's a mental gymnastics, let me tell you. And then it goes into capitalism, class, and the matrix of domination. No subtleties here. How capitalism works. It says this is a chapter exactly about how capitalism is built to steal money and value from everybody and concentrate it at the top. It's not true. The way it is carried out might end up that way in many cases, but it just isn't. It isn't actually what capitalism is designed to do, and it actually isn't always what happens even in capitalism. But in this book, it's just fact, and it's just true, and you just, yep, that's the way it is. Capitalism and class, capitalism, difference and privilege, race and gender. And this is a chapter about how, depending on your race and your gender, you may be rewarded or not by capitalism. You may be exploited or not by capitalism. You're more likely to be exploited if you are not white and if you are female. Just as fact. You can pull out all of these sorts of facts that make those things seem like fact. You can do that. You can be well, then why are all the Black people poor? Right? Why are Black people tend to have more poverty and more crime? It has to be because capitalism made it that way and everybody hates Black people, right? It couldn't possibly be anything else. None of the other possibilities are even explored in a text like this. And if you were writing an honest text, you would explore the other possibilities and at least give them their fair share of data points or possibility, suggestions or references or something. But that isn't what this class is for. This class is to just present you with the one thing that if you don't believe, it's because you're the indoctrinated one, actually. You're the one who's ignorant. You don't understand your own privilege. You're taking it for granted. You're a racist. You've internalized the racism. You've internalized the sexism. You've internalized the classism. And all of these things are the only things that matter. They're the only things that matter is what class you are, what race you are, what sex you are, what your sexual orientation is, what your religion is. And again, I want to emphasize you are cooler or you have more oppression points, you get away with more, or you get more attention and pity the more you have those things. So the more you're like, oh, I'm disabled and I'm not a white person and I am a woman and I all of this stuff and I'm gay too, by the way, and like anything else you can pile on. Now you're the coolest person here. You have the most oppression points. You've won the oppression Olympics. So you can see how you might want to be labeled as mentally ill, or you might want to become trans so that you're no longer a male or a female or whatever it is that might be messing up your privilege points here. Otherwise, someone else gets to come along and be like, you're privileged and I'm not. So you better be nice to me, do what I want, bow down to me. History has oppressed me and you must correct it. Making privilege happen, avoidance, exclusion, rejection, and worse. This is just more. It says the trouble with the trouble, how systems of privilege work. What can we do? Become part of the solution. And it's funny, right after this, after Evergreen, I went into my graduate program and it was much less indoctrination like altogether. It was much more open-ended and there was many people of many different philosophies and economic, beliefs and religious, spiritual, and it just was not in any way uniform. And so that was really good. But even in that, we talked about how the benefits of voluntary segregation in the lunchroom. This was a teaching program, right? The benefits of voluntary segregation, the benefits of kids sitting at table with their like cultures. So there's the, African-American culture table, and there's the Black kids, but who are raised in like sort of white culture, you might call it, if for lack of a better term. There's their table, and here's the, Latino table, and there's the Asian table, and right, you can see this in lunchrooms everywhere actually, and here we are talking about how that's actually good for students. It's good for them to be of like cultures and to be accepted right exactly for what they are, and and it's like, oh well, at Evergreen that was bad and we're supposed to force everyone into mixed tables and like force this sort of cultural mixing, and then also at the same time make sure everyone at the table was the nicest to the people who had the most oppression points, and right, very different. But anyways, at Evergreen, that was not what we were talking about in general. So at Evergreen, I became, somewhat radicalized by all of this. At the same time, I was exposed to the Revolutionary Communist Party USA. Here's their website. It's as bad as it looks. It's looked this way in most of my life. And, just recently, again, Charlie Kirk was assassinated for his beliefs, and Bob Avakian, their cult of personality leader in the Revolutionary Communist Party, who's absolutely an agent. There's like no other possibility at all. But they have this whole mythology built around him, like, oh, he escaped the FBI and the CIA and he lives on a boat in the middle of the Pacific because they can't get him. Like, I'm not joking. So Bob Avakian, who's somehow still alive and talking, he wrote just on September 12th, yes, this Trump mega fascism really is that bad. And if it is not driven from power soon, it will get far worse. And here's just reading that, what I know now, I can see just how much he plays into exactly what they want. This is absolutely an op. There's no way that it would exist this long otherwise. It's so ridiculous. I asked them that at the time too. I was like, hold up. You're telling me there's this guy who's like the leader of this party and that he's been around for decades, but we're such a dangerous threat that like we're oppressed all the time, but that guy's still alive. Like, did you know how many people they've assassinated? Dude, if your guy was a threat, he'd be dead. You're like, oh no, he's so smart. He got away. Like, you guys are a little bit crazy. So that was just last week, just in response to Charlie Kirk's death, that he wrote that. So still stoking the fires. But, the Revolutionary Communist Party, I started hanging out with because of anti-war protests. I would go to anti-war protests and they would be there and they'd be like, do you want to help? We're trying to help the Black community get more involved in the anti-war protests. Do you want to help us go to the Black communities and pass out flyers? And I'd be like, yeah, because I was just like idealistic, like, let's stop this war. But as I got into it, I was also then like, oh, what's this communism thing all about? And what's this revolution thing all about? And I'm like reading the literature and I'm like, oh yeah, capitalism is bad, right? I just learned that at Evergreen. And oh yeah, all of this privilege is bad. We got to tear this apart. This is why war happens. If I'm anti-war, then I'm definitely anti-capitalist, right? We wouldn't have Northrop Grumman and all of these, profiteers of war if we didn't have capitalism. Like, despite that, you can look at the history of communists and see like they've got war too. They've also got people who are rich off of it. But anyways, I wasn't the best history student at that time. And so I got into it. So I would go to more and more protests, and I do more and more work with the Revolutionary Communist Party until eventually I was just calling myself a communist. I was wearing communist clothes. Not kidding. I was like, get patches and buttons, and I would buy shirts that had the Revolutionary Communist logo on it. And oh God. Yeah, it was like a whole thing. But part of what they did, right, that is so smart is they'd be like, oh, Lindsay. Well, actually, they called me Corey. This is where I got the pen name Corey, because we all used fake names as though that mattered. I'm not kidding you. Which at the time you're like, oh, I'm in like a group where things are dangerous and you have to use fake names. like it seemed stupid to me, but I was also kind of like enamored by it. I had both perspectives. I was like, this is pretty, like, if anyone wanted to know who we are, they could figure it out. But also, like, it's pretty cool. I get to choose a fake name. So actually they'd call me Corey. But Corey, oh, you're like so good. You're so good at writing. Will you write us an article for the Revolutionary Communist newspaper? So now my ego's into it, right? I'm like, oh, I could be a published author. Yeah, I'll write you an article. What do you want to know about? Oh, will you write about, what, I don't even know. One of them was about abortion, or having an abortion, and how much I loved it, and how everyone should always be able to have abortions. Right. Or I'm sure I wrote something about like how college campuses needed to be like more active in the revolutionary, whatever. And who knows what else. Up until a couple of years ago, I could find these articles still. They were published under Corey Sharman, Quorri, quite specific spelling that no one else in the world has ever had. So is that what Bob Avakian looks like? This whole time I've never known. So I could still find it, but they scrubbed it, or they changed their layout, or it's hard for find. And if you find it, cool, send it to me. But so I started writing for them. So I was a writer for the Revolutionary Communist Party. So that felt cool too. So now I was like involved. I'm going to protests, and I'm like writing things. And then one day they're like, hey, can you get up with the loudspeaker and, tell everyone whatever? I was like, oh, I get to be the person who says things on a loudspeaker and whatever. And it was just like directions or some organizational stuff. It was nothing. That was the first time. Then we had one of the bigger protests. The biggest protest I was part of was 50,000 strong. It was, I think, around 2003. It was in Seattle, and it was the anti-war protest. It was huge. It was huge. But one of the still very big ones that we did had, 4,000 to 10,000 people. I don't know exactly. The area we could see was clearly at least 4,000 people. And then there was supposedly more people in the streets outside of the park we were in. It was in downtown Seattle. And they were like, hey, can you get up really quick and just fill 5 or 10 minutes with just the story about your abortion and how necessary it was and how it's helping you live a better life and how everyone should have access to abortion. And I was like, oh, I'm not like a public speaker. So talking in front of people terrifies me. And they're like, oh, it's just quick, just do it here. And they push me up, and now I'm speaking in front of thousands of people. And they're all cheering when I say something, and they're all reacting to me. And I don't want to be in front of a crowd of people, but at the same time, you feel pretty cool when you get back down and you're like, whoa, I just talked to 4,000 people and they all liked it. You feel something, right? Is it power? Is it whatever? It's an ego, at least. So this is a little bit intoxicating. This is not by accident. You can actually look at this as you could make the diagram of grooming young people into radical organizations, and it would go exactly like I just described. First, you'd be in just a class, and you'd be, I don't know, I don't really feel that way, but everybody would be like, oh yes, you do, because this, and a book, and your professor would all reinforce it, and you'd be like, oh, maybe this is really true. And then you might be at a protest just because you're anti-war. It's a very normal sentiment to have. And now all of a sudden you're in a revolutionary communist organization. Now all of a sudden you're moving up the ranks, and you're someone who writes for them and speaks at their events and organizes their protests. So I'm getting into this whole thing. Well, from time to time, they'd be like, we got to step it up. We got to maybe even bring in some fire and some whatever, some Molotovs. And I'm like, whoa, what? Do what with them? oh, we just, things are getting heavy and like we got to stop this war and we're not going to do it without that. We need some events, like we need some attention. Like, I'd be like, well, don't count me in. Because again, luckily, I still had like a sense of self that had something to do with morality, that had something to do with my soul. And so I was able to say, no, I don't want to throw Molotov cocktails at people or like cause any harm really to any even structures, let alone people, like, And we were out once and we were doing just a really small thing on the Seattle Community College campus, which is right there in the district whose name I can't remember, Capitol Hill, which was like, especially at that time, it was much more actually gay and actually very poor. And now it's been super gentrified and it's like flashy. And they're like, yeah, it's the gay neighborhood. And you're like, well, it was actually gay before. Now it just has rainbow walkways and like $10 million apartments. But it was pretty grungy and sketchy then. And we were running around at the Seattle Community College campus doing something. I don't even remember what the activity it was, but we were agitating for something and yelling in loudspeakers and trying to get college students excited. And all of a sudden, one of our leaders, who I look back at now and know was an agent, but I didn't understand that at the time. I knew agents would come to our meetings, right? Like I knew agents were of the law, official agents where the law would like infiltrate and try to like get information and see what we were doing. But the left hand doesn't know what the right hand does, as they say, right? And so there were other agents that were actually like in the organization itself. And I look back, I know who those people were. But at the time, I just thought they were really, I was even like, how do you guys do this full time? Like, how do you get money? Like, don't ask too many questions. They don't like that. And so this person was at this event and he was like, oh my God, you guys, come on, we gotta go. And he started running and everybody started running. And I was like, why are we running? Like, what's actually happening? And nothing was happening, but everyone was running. So I was kind of like jogging after them, but like not really committed because I was really questioning like what was happening right now and what was the motivation for running and what was the goal. And he ran into the college while classes were happening and they were like banging on doors and windows and screaming and like throwing leaflets and like causing chaos. And I was just like, okay, I'm out. And I went down like a different direction and just left and went home. But I was starting to be like, I don't like this organization anymore. Like, I'm just anti-war. Like, I don't even know if I'm into all of this. And very shortly on the heels of that, I went to one of the many meetings that you go to if you're around this sort of organization. And there's free food. So college student, again, there's like a little ways they try to like pull people in. And I went to one of these meetings and they were saying something about, oh yeah, in the Glorious Revolution, I'm literally serious. They talk like cult members that use all of this ideological speech. But in the Glorious Revolution, when we have to put people into re-education camps for, their spiritual beliefs or whatever, it's going to be, difficult to find like da-da-da. And I was like, hold up, like what? Well, yeah, what did you think we were going to do? Like when you have a revolution, you have to like have re-education camps for the people who are capitalist voters. And I was like, yeah, but you're saying like spiritual people? And they're like, yeah, religious people, Christians, Muslims, whatever, but, also spiritual people like tarot readers or whatever. And I was like, I'm a spiritual person. I'm a tarot reader. I'm someone who talks to God or has this connection, and they're like, oh yeah, you'll go in the camp. Dead ass, like deadpan, like there's no problem with this statement. Like this person's both going to help us carry out the revolution and then also be put into a camp immediately afterwards because they're spiritual. No joke. Like, oh, all you have to do is not be spiritual. Like, okay, but I am. I am spiritual. So the re-education camp is meant to force you into the beliefs of the stuff. So this is how I broke from it because I was like, well, that's deeply and utterly in opposition to the core of who I am. I can say, oh, I'm anti-war and I'm this, and I want to help you get poor Black people into the political movement, and I want to go to college campuses and inspire people because those things are something my heart can agree with. But when you then say I have to enslave or imprison or force re-educate spiritual people, I'm like, okay, no, I am actually done. And that was the final straw. And I never went to another meeting. I never went to another thing. I never read another book. They definitely tried to keep me coming and like, where'd you go? And like, we need you. And like, here, read this book and all that stuff. And I was just like, no, I'm done. That was it. That was my, boundary that I'd come up against. They're still going strong, clearly. And not only that, but Antifa is bigger than ever. And Antifa, when I was a communist, was also around, but you can't even find record of it now. So again, 2003, 2006, I didn't go to an event ever where Antifa wasn't. Antifa was 100% there. They had black flags. They called themselves Antifa. And this, all the things you can find are like 2003 Antifa was not prominent. They didn't exist. The only thing that existed, they say, was this like this ARE, Anti-Racist Action Network. I'm like, okay, sure. As a fully CIA infiltrated, like official organization that can accept money and that organizes nationwide, Antifa didn't exist. But Antifa existed as an underground movement called Antifa that was close to the Black Bloc anarchists, who are the ones that, by the way, are the most infiltrated of the anarchists and are used to cause chaos as agent provocateurs in, protests and the like. They were very close. Antifa and Black Bloc were very close. They never showed up separate from each other, and they were always coordinating. So underground, yes. Antifa also back then was mostly youth, whereas the Revolutionary Communist Party was mostly older people with some youth. Antifa was like mostly youth, and they were mostly willing to commit violence. If somebody at a protest was going to break something or start a fire or throw a Molotov or like get crazy, it was going to be Antifa or Black Bloc. Or both. And you knew it. So I knew Antifa existed. I knew that like I wasn't into their tactics and I wasn't in their organization, but they were there every time. But if you tell people this, they think you're a liar or they think you're misremembering for some reason. Because the official story is Antifa didn't exist until the 2010s. Which is like a decade later. So really interesting to find that out, that Antifa didn't exist, even though I saw it. So I told the AI, like, well, I worked with them and I saw them and they were there at every protest. And they're like, oh, well, here's why. There's different kinds of anti-fascism movements. I'm like, no, there's not. There's one. It's Antifa. They called themselves Antifa then. I had to ask, what is Antifa? And they had to say anti-fascist to me. Had the same fist and everything. The same color scheme of black, white, and red, by the way. It's also what the revolutionary communists and socialist parties use. So, I get told that I'm a liar by AI and by official things, but that was actually real. It was actually there at the time, and that's actually how it was. They were the most likely to be violent, the most disaffected, and the youngest people at these types of events and protests. So they were there. I don't know why people don't accept it, but it's true. And this is, again, like I said, there's a playbook of how you get people, especially young people. It doesn't work on people who have already decided who they are and figured out, their identity actually in the world and understood society and politics and their place in it and are mentally and emotionally, generally, for the most part, well. It doesn't work on those people. So you have to go after people who are young, impressionistic, idealistic, who want attention, who want to be heard, who want to be seen as, productive or important. You have to go after those people and you have to do all of these things. So targeting, in fact, disillusioned youth is the number one way. Disillusioned youth, so impoverished youth that have experienced trauma. I was definitely in that category, by the way, but luckily, I had just enough wellness to get out. But it's definitely true. So when you're at a protest, they even would tell us, like, don't even bother talking to the rich, well-dressed kids. I would do it anyway because I was into debate. I didn't actually just want to like indoctrinate people. I wanted to talk to them about like why they thought what they thought and what they were doing and what I was doing and who amongst us is right. Right. And so I liked that. So I'd be like arguing with the Republican kids and they'd be off targeting like the poor kids to try to get them in. But it's a thing they do, right? Like, don't even bother talking to them. Talk to these people instead. They knew what they were doing. Framing the narrative. They framed complex problems in easy to digest ways, right? Oh, of course your life has been hard because capitalism. Like, well, it's a little more complex than that, actually, a lot more complex than that. But it's so easy to be like, yeah, my life has been really hard. Let's blame capitalism instead of my parents' possible failures, or my family historically, like multi-generationally's possible failures, right? Or any other types of things. Let's just dumb it down and blame capitalism. It's easy to grasp onto, it's easy to hold, it's easy to then run with. Mentorship and relationship building. So it's almost like AA. You've got like a sponsor. You've got like your person you check in with. They give you the literature. They give you your pamphlets to hand out. They give you the books for you to read to indoctrinate yourself. Like they're in charge of your indoctrination essentially. And so we had ours, and mine was that one that, like I said, I've understood now as an agent. Whose real name I never knew, right? I see now the benefit for them of us not having our names involved, our real names. It'd be so awkward though. I'd be walking around with my friends in Seattle and somebody'd be like, Corey. And I'd like turn and they'd be like, hey, Corey, how are you? My friends were like, who the fuck is Corey, dude? Who are you? I'm like, oh, no. It's just like, yeah, it is actually really weird. You're right. I swear to God, I'm not in a cult. Hierarchy, internal hierarchy, moving people up the hierarchy, like I said. Us versus them mentality, which, by the way, isn't just us versus the capitalists, us versus the government, us versus the economic system. It's also us versus anyone who isn't a communist, right? Us versus people who protest in different ways. In group, out group. And like, oh yeah, you know what? You're going to be even more of a writer eventually. You're going to write books for us eventually. You're going to be so big, Corey, by the way. You're going to speak at these rallies. You're going to get higher up. Like there's this path to power for you. And again, I wasn't like drunk on power. I was drunk on ego. And drunk on people seeming to think that I mattered, which is not something we have enough of for youth in our culture. So, disenfranchised youth, traumatized youth that haven't been given enough love or attention. That's almost everybody, by the way. It's almost everybody in our culture. Almost all of our youth don't have enough attention, support, love. And that's also what drives them into transing themselves. So these things aren't separate topics, actually. This is, I had Simon Esler on my show a handful of years ago, and he has made this fantastic film called Cut, Daughters of the West. And this explores the transing of our youth. And most interestingly, it points out how young girls are the most likely to become trans. As adults, it's more likely to be males to female. As young people, it's most likely to be women by an overwhelming majority. It's something like 80% of trans kids are young females who are transitioning to male. And he goes into how this has just conveniently matched the numbers exactly of young girls who also seek plastic surgery and other things, or also who just express the desire to not be sexualized and avoid sexualization as children. And so he ties this to this desire not for girls to actually identify as boys, like they wouldn't do it normally, but they live in this highly sexualized culture in which they aren't getting enough of what they need and they don't see any other way out. And so they become men. So a really interesting look at the trans thing. And the trans thing, like I said, is also a problem with kids who don't have enough love, kids who don't have enough attention. In fact, it's a problem with adults who don't have enough love and attention, because it's often adults who are encouraging their children to be trans, even if their children don't want to be trans. I've seen it happen in people who are exceptionally close to me and them doing it to their children. I'm not just thinking this is a thing that happens. I'm watching it happen. So unwell adults who never got enough of what they needed are creating these unwell children who aren't getting enough of what they needed. And it's the same type of people who would fall into cults like the Revolutionary Communist Party or ideologies that are revolutionary or extreme, and that might even find themselves running through the hallways of a college that isn't there, while people are bashing on the walls and throwing things, wondering, oh my God, how did I get here? Because I didn't have enough love, enough attention, or enough self-confidence, enough self-esteem to say, oh, I don't need to speak at your event to feel valuable. I don't need you to publish my writing to know that it's worthy. I don't need to be part of your organization to know that I'm helping the world. I did need that, right? And so unfortunately, that's where I found it. And this is where we have these problems. And this is where we're seeing the transing of kids. This is where we're seeing the radicalization of young people. And this is why universities have gotten away with becoming more and more radical and radicalizing their youth, because it is the most addictive point of view. And it's the easiest thing to fall into, this victim culture, and say, oh, it's all capitalism, or oh, it's all Charlie Kirk, or oh, it's all Republicans and Christians. That's why my life is hard. That's why I've never felt enough love. That's why I've never felt accepted. That's why I feel scared about the future. That's what it is. Too easy. It's too easy. If you haven't seen this show, or if you haven't listened to the interview with Simon on Rogue Soul, then go back and check that out. It's definitely, they're both worth your time. And this is the crisis, right? Is that we don't have enough wellness. We don't have enough love. We don't have enough support. We don't have enough confidence building. We don't have enough wellness in our adults either. So of course it's not going to trickle down to our children, and they're going to go looking for something. And unfortunately, they're going to find it. And it's going to be in the most destructive ways possible. There's very few people who are genuinely, lovingly waiting to get all these kids and bring them into some organization that would be better, that would not be self-serving or would not be destructive. That's not as present, unfortunately. It's the whole problem. So we see, again, I'm not surprisingly at all. And again, we're going with what we seem to know so far, is that this Charlie Kirk assassin, Tyler Robinson, had a trans boyfriend and had a furry fixation. And furry, if you don't know, is a sexual fetish where people dress up as very cartoonish looking animals. And there's often a lot of pedophilia and other really debased sexual things going on in that subculture, by the way. And so this person had a furry fixation and was in a relationship with a trans person, which was a male to female. It was a biological male who believed that they're a female and acted like a female. And so again, there's not actually a technical problem with wanting to dress up like a cartoonish animal and have sex. That fetish has no technical problem. If that's what you want to do with your adult life, like, you feel free. No problem with that. There's not a technical problem with being a biological male and believing, oh, well, there is a problem with that, but there's not a problem with dressing as a female or pretending like you're a female and having sex with your gay lover. No problem with that. You're consenting adults. You get to do what you want. You can't actually deny either that this movement, as we just talked about, is the same as the movements that are radicalizing youth in other ways, in that it preys on immaturity, trauma, a lack of acceptance, a lack of enough love, a lack of confidence, a fear of society or being social or being accepted or being able to be successful in the world. It preys on all of those things and it pulls them in and it says, here, you don't even actually have to be afraid of sex because you can just put on this furry outfit and just have sex with anybody in this room with a furry outfit on. Or here, you don't have to worry about how hard it is to find a woman to love because here's this gay man who will dress up like a woman for you. Or here, you don't actually have to worry about, what it actually is that's gone wrong in your life because it's capitalism. So come join us. We're all going to go together and we're going to fight for communism. We're going to make the world better. And all of a sudden you have an identity and you have a group of people and you feel safe again, and you don't have to confront all of those things that were terrifying to you, and you don't have to do better at anything in life because actually you get this grand excuse. Oh, it was that I was in the wrong body. Oh, it's that I'm actually a furry. Oh, it's that I'm a communist. It's capitalism. Okay, well then everything's going to be fine. So much easier. It's just like drugs. Oh, I don't have to feel things. I'll just shoot up. Oh, I don't have to deal with this difficult conversation with my family member. I'll just go get drunk. Easy to escape, easy to avoid. Here's this fully packaged community waiting for you, fully accepting of every aspect of your failures and every aspect of the failures of those around you. Oh, and all those emotions you feel, anger and, you know, grief, all of these feelings you have, fear. Oh, we have a solution to all of those. We're going to make them all better. So it's very enticing. It's very enticing for broken people to fall into cults, to communism, to furryism, to drugs, they're all the same thing. They're all the same thing. And they all rely on this external loci of control, which I've talked about many times before too, which is that you truly believe that all of your problems have come from outside of yourself. You would be happy, in fact, if other people would just do fill in the blank. You would be better. You would be able to be, successful. Like everything would be good if that person or all of these people would just do blank. This is a narcissistic, sociopathic, psychopathic, cluster B, victim mentality sort of belief. They all go hand in hand, this external loci of control. It's just saying the location you put the control in your life is outside of yourself. And so you blame, you never take responsibility because you don't have any, because the control in your life doesn't come from you. So people with internal loci of control have generally had a family that is strong and stable, that gives them at least a decent amount of love and reinforcement that's positive. That's it. That was the end of the equation, by the way. Those are the people who tend to have internal loci of control. It happens in other places. And that's maybe almost by accident. But the best and easiest way to create this is by having exactly that, a strong and stable family that loves you and supports you. And the people who don't end up being in all of these things that we've talked about. Radicalized in college campuses easily and pretty consistently and completely. Or by cults like the Revolutionary Communist Party or other political radical ideologies, or furry, or trans, or all of the above. Because people like this exist. If this is not the person who shot Charlie Kirk, great, but they still exist. And they are people who are radicalized politically, and furries and or trans, and possibly also high, and definitely have the external loci of control, are victims, and have decided that you're the one who is in charge, and therefore you might have to pay for what you've done, by the way. And so another really interesting piece of this in the modern world, at least, is the absolute saturation of media, of internet, of games, of screen time, and how sociopathic and psychopathic and cluster B and narcissistic that makes people, or at least it supports those types of attitudes. So not everything I'm talking about are diagnosable disorders, but they're on the spectrum, or they share characteristics with those diagnosable disorders. I talk about how we live in a psychopathic society, and it encourages psychopathy and psychopathy adjacent behaviors and coping mechanisms and ways of interacting, which is to not, but right. And those go all the way through the cluster B personality disorder types of activities or beings or ways of being, orientation. So this screen time overload has added to this. And so it's said, I don't know if it's proven, I don't know for sure if it's for sure, but people have said this shooter was deep into Reddit, the Discord servers, and games, first-person shooters included, deep into that. And if so, again, I'm not like the 80s, 90s, like blame the music, but also it actually matters how much time you spend saturated in this world that isn't real. And so, this phenomenon creates people who actually don't really have a high understanding or a feeling of the difference between reality and the screen. And that's deeply dangerous, because no matter what you're seeing on the screen, you're already in some sort of slightly psychopathic relation to it, because it's not real. It can't hurt you. It can't talk back to you. It can't get anywhere here, so you can throw anything at it. And this is why you see people online, they're fighting and they're being horrible. And you're like, well, if you were sitting in a room together, this is not how you'd be acting. We've all done it, in fact. I'm sure of it. I have. I still do sometimes. I have to be like, whoa, 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 stop. It's just like, what would you say if this person stood right in front of you? Only say that, right? We've all done that. So there's this unreality, there's this psychopathy, they're devoid of empathy, compassion, emotion, because you're aware that this is not real and it can't affect you or touch you. So it gets really one-sided. It gets really, really, really gross. There's more to it than that. And the way that this AI is summarizing this for us, it says is excessive time online is caused by a mix of psychological and biological factors exacerbated by algorithms. So that's interesting that the AI is actually throwing that. That's actually true. The algorithms are often designed to keep you on longer and to do things that trigger your emotional states more deeply. So especially anger is easy. Anger and fear are easy. So a lot of people get stuck in the anger and fear algorithm. I specifically and intentionally train mine to give me the happiness and helpful energy algorithm. So you still have some of my emotion, I guess, but it's going to be a good one at least, right? And you can do that too. But the algorithms definitely are attempting to maximize your emotional response and keep you engaged longer. So this talks about terms like digital overload, doom scrolling, and internet overexposure syndrome describe the core issue behind this feeling that perhaps the world isn't even real. Perhaps it's not even real, or I know it's real technically, but I'm so saturated in the unreality of all of the unreal worlds I've spent so much time in my whole life that I no longer have the distinction of my behavior between the real and the unreal. I will act the same as the dissociated psychopathic side of me acts in the unreal world as I do in the real world. It talks about the psychological and social roots of doom scrolling, negativity bias, and how the algorithms feed you this negative bias to keep you going longer. This curated and unrealistic comparisons. Also, everything you see online is possibly through a filter. It's only what people wanted to show you. So you're seeing this really skewed version of reality. Like you're not seeing people go poop or pee or feed themselves. You're seeing them like vacation and like, dance on the roof or whatever. Just like these perfect moments and not the human moments. The fear of missing out is part of this. It's another sort of unreality. Like I have to always be knowing what's going on in the world and around me, and otherwise I'm not going to know. And right. So you get this information overload. You therefore like can't even understand information anymore. You have nowhere to put it because there's so much of it. Right. This is a big one, actually, because then you go out into the world and you're just as like, I don't know what to think or do with any of this. Right? Like that's crazy. This is that feeling of unreality. You can have increased anxiety and reactivity from being online. This is part of the light, the optics, like the optogenetics of it. Like there's a whole science behind this and how this negatively affects you, creates anxiety and stress in your body, in your cells. You don't get to choose to not experience that, by the way. That just is what happens. You can use those glasses and certain like red light, green, blue light, whatever blockers, but you're still going to have some level of it, and we're surrounded by them. Disrupted reward systems. We've got this like dopamine malfunction because we've had more dopamine in the first 10 minutes of our day than we used to have in a week or a month. So it's this really just distorted understanding of what life's supposed to feel like. It disrupts your sleep cycles, your circadian rhythms, your stress responses. You can literally get cyber sickness. And so this person, like almost everybody, is oversaturated in these things. And if you didn't start from a place of secure wellness, super, right, like just good, stable, confident, all this stuff, good relationships, you didn't start there. You were already disadvantaged, and then you oversaturated yourself and have an addiction to the oversaturation. And you've just created this dissociative, psychopathic inability to understand or be real in reality. And I'm not excusing anyone, but this is a large part of what we see when Charlie Kirk gets assassinated. Again, love him, hate him, don't care. But when a man gets shot live on TV and the whole world sees it, and the reaction of people in the crowd watching it happen is to cheer, this is why. This is why. There's a large part of them that cannot be in reality with us. And is the injection somehow exacerbating that? Did it disconnect people from their souls? Yeah, perhaps that too. But let's just stick with what we absolutely know for sure, which is this. This has done this to people. This has made life unreal for people. This has made them incapable of having responses. I'm not talking about the thing where something bad happens and you laugh because you genuinely are under so much stress and you don't know what to do. And you might see a child do this or even an adult do it because it's just in the moment itself. It's just too much pressure. And people will laugh at things that are really wrong to laugh at. But it's one person in a large group might do it. This was lots of people in the crowd cheering when a man was killed in front of them instantly. No thought time, no pause. My instant response even to that on a game is no, right? Let alone when I know it's real and now I have real emotions. So I have not apparently become oversaturated. I have not lost myself to this, but so many people have, especially if you're raised with this. When I was a kid, we had a half-hour a day limit on our screen time. Now what do kids have? A 7-hour limit? What's the limit? Is there a limit? All day, phone. At school, computers. At home, TV. Is 8 hours low? I mean, I genuinely don't know. I don't have a kid, and if I did, they wouldn't have that situation in their life. But what is normal for people? Probably, I'm guessing 8 hours is normal. It's sad. I'm sitting here staring at a screen to share this with you. You're sitting here possibly staring at the screen to hear it from me. At least you and I have an understanding that you and I are real people in a real world with real lives, real hearts, real souls, and that it matters. So this is really powerful. This is really deep, and it's a part of the puzzle of what's going on with the youth who have seemingly chosen, in large part, to support murder for a political reason and cheer it on and enjoy it and maybe even carry it out if it's true that Tyler Robinson did. Right? That radicalization, is it a university's fault? No. Are the universities promoting this? Absolutely. But maybe what's even worse than that is this screen time, this unreality that sets in for people who spend too much time online. This psychopathy that is naturally built into screen time of every kind. So, yeah, it causes social and emotional disorders. We know that. It's not just something I'm making up. It's not just something AI is describing. There's studies on screen time, TV, social media, all of it. Even no matter what it is, the combination of all of those things causes social and emotional disorders in children. Sometimes it's because they're literally addicted to it. They want more of it. And if you take it away from them, they're going to freak out. Sometimes it's because they're becoming sociopathic, psychopathic, or at least antisocial, because they have an easier time dealing with the screen than reality. Duh. And so all kinds of mental and emotional disorders are being seen in younger and younger kids at higher and higher rates. Oh, and then we throw pharmaceuticals at it and make it worse. But, here we are being the worst kind of parents and the worst kind of teachers and the worst kind of role models because we're just letting them be saturated in these worlds that they can't handle. It is breaking them. And we're like, oh, yeah, here, have some more because we're lazy. Because parents are like, oh, it's so hard. Oh, it's so hard to spend time with my kid. Or even I hear, well, I had to get things done. I had to do the dishes and the this, so I had to let them do it. No, make them do it with you, you asshole. It serves them. It's better for them. But they're going to whine until they stop because you won't give in. And then they'll be like, cool, let's sweep together, Mom. Just get over it and do it. You're saving your child's life. A little bit of screen time is fine. You don't need to make your kid like a Luddite, but you have to have really good boundaries, strict boundaries, and very little. The brightest and most capable kids I've ever known in this modern age have the same recipe my parents gave me, which was half an hour of screen time a day, no more than that. You can choose how you do it. It can be a game, it can be a show. We don't care. Half hour, that's it. On very special occasions, we would watch a movie, right? Like, that's cool. No, you don't get a phone, and you don't get a screen in your hand all the time. And if you do, it has one program on it. It's the call program. You can call me from somewhere, but you don't get to have apps. You don't get to have social media. You don't get to spend time in this false world that ruins you emotionally and mentally. And so that's what you should be like, in my opinion, because that's what the data shows is good for you and your children. Kids who have too much screen time also have reduced social interaction, which exacerbates all of the mental and emotional disorders that come from it. They have diminished emotional recognition. So we were talking about how dangerous it was to wear masks for a year or more around little infants and toddlers, because it is literally when they're learning how to recognize human emotion, and they can't see it if it's covered up by a mask. And so we're making all of these psychopaths. We've actually seen that bear out in the studies, that that's exactly what we did. Well, I'm not saying they're all diagnosed with psychopaths, but they have psychopathic types of tendencies at a much higher rate than the generation before them. So we have this as well with screens, diminished emotional recognition. It's the same reasons, right? This is not real. It's not real. It's unreality. Can't hurt me, can't affect me, so I don't need to care about it. So you get used to and you get desensitized to seeing emotions on a screen, on a movie, on a game, on a whatever, on a social media, and not caring, not reacting appropriately, not taking it in. And so then when you go to reality and it happens, you have the same response. Oh, a guy just got shot. Laugh. That's funny. Right? Diminished emotional recognition and the normalization of violence. So if you think this isn't an important conversation in connection with a kid who probably shot a guy at a place, then you're wrong. It's absolutely maybe the most crucial. It's this, and pharmaceuticals are like the number one correlates to the people who are committing violence. Yeah, there's a reason for that, right? You get radicalized more easily. You commit violence more easily. So then you can ask the question, so are children who are raised with moral guidance and a stable, nurturing family environment more likely to be well-adjusted and confident adults? And overwhelmingly, all of the studies say yes. So when you say like, oh, don't get down on single parents, like nobody's getting down on you. We're just telling you the facts that you have a much higher likelihood of having a child who's going to be not well-adjusted, possibly violent, and very unsuccessful in life. They will feel worse and do worse at life. Nobody's necessarily judging you. It's just like saying like, yeah, you smoke cigarettes, you're probably going to get cancer. You have a single parent family, you're going to have less likelihood for success for your children. The end. Gay parents, whatever, get into that. We can get into that another time. I've already done shows on this, but at least let's say you have to have a 2-parent household that is stable, meaning you have an emotional wellness at the adult level that keeps stability emotionally, mentally, and physically in the home. Your kid knows that they get to come home and that the things they have will be there and that everyone there will be stable and they get to live in this environment. That it builds trust, it builds confidence, it builds a sense of self and identity. And these kids don't end up in the Communist Party, and they don't end up as furries, and they don't end up as trans kids. And it's not because their parents were like, you better not be a communist furry. Like, that's not why. It's because they weren't looking for anything to fill the hole of what they didn't get. And yes, there are kids in those groups that had 2 parents and had a seemingly stable home, and we'll get to that. But this is one of the highest predictors of success and wellness for your kid, is having a stable family setting. It's also, parenting styles, being an authoritative parent instead of a permissive parent. Therefore, you're able to say, no, this is the boundary and that's the end of the story. That's all there is to that. It's like you just have to make yourself be that person or else you're failing your kids. You have some sort of moral guidance, like this is how we treat people and this is how humans are. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a religion or it can just be the way you taught your kids to be moral, right? a secure environment. You have positive outcomes that are linked to these because your resilience, your coping strategies are much higher. Your trust is much higher. Your confidence is much higher. It gives you agency as a child. You feel like you can do anything because you always have been able to do everything because someone's always been there, encouraging you or helping you or providing you with the environment you needed. And you internalize all those things and those values. It becomes very lifelong success-based stuff. So yeah, it does matter. It matters what your home life is like. It matters what you got as a child or didn't get as a child that predisposes you to these things. You go to college in that state, oh, you're done for. It doesn't even matter if the colleges themselves were actually at a much more, let's say, like a higher level of, oh, I don't know, intention around what kind of skills they wanted to give instead of what types of ideologies they wanted to promote. Let's just put it that way. And because even if they did have that and they were like, look, we're just here to give kids skills and empower them, and that's it. We're not going to deal with ideologies. We're not going to take it upon ourselves to tell you how to be in the world. We're just going to give you the ability to do in the world. That would be ideal. And if they didn't do that, even then there would still be the revolutionary communist parties and the furries and the trans and all of these things that would say like, hey, look what we have for you, right? Whether they know they're doing that or not, that's what they're doing. They're saying, hey, broken kid, here's a family for you. Here's a place where you can shine. Here's where you can get that stability you've never had. Here's where you can get the confidence no one ever gave you. We got you. Everybody wants that. So that would still be out there in the world, even if the universities weren't doing it. But the universities are doing it. So, right, like I said, that class list and those courses and those things that were at evergreen back in the day, those are everywhere. You can look at that and you can see it at every college now. It is normalized now. It has been shipped out to every college and university for the most part. It's there. And so the only time this is really unlikely to work, right? The stable family with the morals instilled and the authoritative parenting and ideally the reduction of screen time is if your kid is actually just a sociopathic or psychopathic kid. And that's it. You can't do anything about it. And it happens, right? It happens. It happens. And it also is created sometimes. You can have like the best of intentions and then someone came in and brutalized your kid somehow, right? God forbid. And that can create big, deep issues that send them off into all sorts of problems, right? Or they can just be born that way. There just are psychopaths. They just exist. Sociopathy, like you could argue you can create it with enough trauma and all of this. Psychopathy, you seem to be born with it. It's untreatable and it's you can't undo it. You could do all the best parenting you want and there it is, right? I'm not saying that like most kids aren't this and you don't have to like worry about this, but it exists. So, some people are like, well, what about the people who came from great families? Well, there's something wrong with them. That just is a thing that happens to humans. And it could also happen because you got a head injury or you did the wrong drug at the wrong moment of your brain's development. There's all kinds of things that can happen in life, but these are the outliers. Right? So we shouldn't take what about the kid that wasn't like that for and like make the whole story untrue. The data shows what's true. So we can just trust that. We give kids this. We're less likely to get people who will either shoot someone from a rooftop for words they said or celebrate it when it happens. Less likely to. And again, all of the data shows too what it is that also helps if you do develop, some mental unwellness or whatever. And I'll say, I grew up in a family where it was, there was the little bit of stability and then there was a lot of instability and trauma and horror and whatever. And then there was some stability again. So like people can come in and out of this too. You can have all the best intentions and things kind of fall apart and you got to like pull it back together. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have mental or emotional disturbance or unwellness, some trauma or whatnot, don't necessarily make it worse with pharmaceuticals, because pharmaceuticals in this case are the number one predictor of going into deeper dissociation, having suicidal or murderous or violent tendencies and ideations. So that's an absolute fact. And you can check that out with your doctor when you talk to them about what's right for you and your family. And you can also know that all of the studies show that the things that are as or more effective than pharmacology in mental and emotional situations of health are things like social connection. Social support protects against depression and other mental illness. And this is true for all kinds of social support. So, like, you can create social support for your children. You can put them in soccer, you can put them in the marching band, you can put them in a church group or other kind of spiritual, religious, moral group. You can build the social support into your child's life. Ideally, you don't do it at school where it's just anything goes, right? Ideally, you do it with a group you've selected because they reflect your values that you would love your kid to be surrounded by. But that is a high predictor protective against it. It's also a curative for it. So if you find yourself with mental or emotional issues and you create a social support situation for yourself or your child, then you're going to get out of your mental and emotional issues easier. It is also true that social engagement in general is protective also even against dementia. So you just like, okay, go play chess or go do whatever, go do social things. It's better for your mental and emotional health. It protects you from dementia. And nature protects you from mental and emotional illness. It heals you from mental and emotional illness. Being in nature, forest bathing, if you want to call it that, grounding, if you want to call it, going for a walk or a hike in nature. By the way, nature can be pretty minimal and still count. Like, you can be in a city park or you can be walking under a tree-lined road next to apartment buildings. Like, nature is just any amount of nature. If you can also go get lost in a national park, well, good, awesome, go do that. But like, nature is all around you no matter where you are. You can find it. And that is better for your mental and emotional health than pharmacology. Even therapy, especially actual therapy and not just counseling, is very good for your mental and emotional well-being, especially if you find some person who isn't themselves deeply unwell, which I know these days can be actually a challenge, but therapy can also be better than pharmacology. And finally, diet. I'm not saying dieting as in restricting your calories. I'm saying eating healthy foods, which is pretty simple and straightforward. It's foods not found in a box, non-processed foods, whole foods, foods you cooked from scratch, foods that have fruits and vegetables and a variety of other things in them. Those foods, organic is best. And if you eat healthy, even for a short time, your mental and your emotional wellness increases no matter the condition you started in. You could be in clinical depression for years, and if you change your diet in these ways, it improves. More effective than pharmacology. So we have nothing but solutions for all of these problems that otherwise can seem overwhelming. We can say, what do we do about the colleges radicalizing the youth? Well, don't give them the youth that they can radicalize. Well, because they're going to, whether they mean to or not. Good argument that they mean to, but even if they didn't, it would happen. If you don't create this network of support from nature, from food, from social interaction, from stable family, from lack of screen time and other degenerative sort of activities, if you don't create that for people, they're not going to have it, and they're going to find really bad substitutions. They're going to either look to mutilate themselves to make themselves seem like, oh, maybe now I can finally get all those things that I needed. They don't know what they are. They just know they don't have it and they never felt good, right? Or they're going to find it in these other groups or these other activities. So you have to give your kids these things. You have to give youth these things. And if you don't have kids, maybe you look towards trying to support the people who are trying to give the kids these things, because it's your world too. And because kids can't do better than what we do for them. And so it really is all of our responsibilities in order to create this world. And again, otherwise we end up with psychopaths who are on roofs shooting at people, and or the giant mass amounts of mostly younger people who responded to that with glee and excitement and joy. They didn't actually feel glee or joy. No, but they felt a delight, and it's a sick kind of delight. And they did it because they lacked all of these things. Well, people don't do this. I saw a meme and it said, happy people ain't hating, and hating people ain't happy. And it's true. All these people that have shown all of this hate in the wake of this event, real or fake, staged or psyop, doesn't matter. Real reactions. All of these people that have been doing that, they're not well. They didn't come from stable families of confidence inspiring, trust building, healthy foods, healthy support systems, good social engagement, good, balance with screen time. They didn't come from those places. And if they did, they wouldn't be doing this, except for the small amount of people who are actual psychopaths. And so we have to fix this psychopathic society and world we're in together by doing it for ourselves. If I just read that list of things that was good for you and you're not doing any of them, you're headed the wrong direction. So make sure you're taking care of yourself first, right? It affects your own oxygen mask in times of trouble before you do it for the people around you. But also when and how possible that you're encouraging that in the rest of the world, especially for youth. And that's the way we fix it. It's actually pretty easy. We just become real people in real life situations that are actually the oldest, most ancient, and most normal things that we can do. And when we stay connected to those things, voila, we are also a well-balanced society. So isn't it funny? It always comes back actually to the family. And so as we've said many times on the show, the most revolutionary thing you can actually do is have a family, maybe a garden, a little urban farm. Pretty traditional, huh? It's good for you. So keep it going. And until you do, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Glued to these screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones, the holly suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. Hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.